Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into episode number 5 of Midweek Meetings. I am KnockdownNico with the camera alongside Pr3ssix.
What's up, everyone?
Week 4, the NFL season has wrapped up, and how would you rate this week?
Um, there were some good games, there's some bad games, and overall, I'm confused about how good each team is, so I'd give it about a 6. I think it just made me more confused on who's really at the top of the top and who's the worst teams in the NFL. So, yeah.
I think we know that one team that's at the top of the NFL. That's the Minnesota Vikings. They won again. We'll just start off with that. We'll get into we'll recap some of the games. We'll get into some headlines, which were looking kind of scarce until, honestly, a couple hours ago when a bunch of headlines just popped up out of nowhere, some big ones as well. And then we'll go into our predictions for the games, our auto lock, and fantasy. And then to finish it up, we have our quote unquote fun question. But this isn't really a recap, but Minnesota's looking like the best team in the NFL so far.
Yeah, they beat the Packers on Sunday, which is unfortunate. But I will say, Vikings looked good. Their run game looks good. Aaron Jones has found a new home in Minnesota. Sad to say, but he's thriving. So the run offense is good. Their pass offense is always going to be good with Justin Jefferson, and they added Jordan Addison last week, who had 2 touchdowns. So to see that duo go out there, I would argue that they're the best 1 and 2 wide receivers in the league. I'd put them over AJ Brown and Davante Smith. Uh, I think Addison just really hasn't proven himself yet. But that aside, their defense is what they're known for. They made Jordan Love throw 3 interceptions on Sunday. Although I do think some of that was him coming back from his injury and he was very uncomfortable. But still, 3 interceptions is nothing to shy away from. And they're clicking. I mean, we got to see who's going to stop them eventually.
That is true. And Sam Darnold looking like front runner for MVP potentially as of right now, which is
Don't get
surprising
too
for
ahead of yourself, bud.
it's a little surprising for Sam Darnold. But hey, maybe he just needed to get out of New York, get out of Carolina, be a backup for a few years, and now he's looking like a legit NFL quarterback. And yeah, we'll see. We'll get into it, but they do play in London this week. We'll get into that in our predictions, but we're going to get into now some of our recaps. First one I want to recap is the Commanders they just dominated Arizona. Jaden Daniels is looking like the clear front runner for offensive rookie of the year without a doubt. And he did throw an
Yeah,
interception, so his turnover streak's over, but I mean, Jaden Daniels is looking like the Bears should have taken Jaden Daniels instead of Caleb Williams as of right now.
yeah. Jaden Daniels has by far been the most impressive rookie quarterback. He's breaking records. He's looking good out there. He's put a spark in this Commanders offense that we really haven't seen from the Commanders in a long time. So they're fun to watch, and we'll see how the rest of the season pans out for them.
I agree. I thought the Cardinals were going to be a little more competitive. Honestly, I mean James Conner did his thing. He had over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown, but I think it's just the defense. The Arizona Cardinals are showing the Arizona Cardinal defense of not being too good, and I think that is why you saw such a dominant win by the Commanders. But this is almost kind of looking like how it did last year. That second overall pick, who was a quarterback, is looking maybe like the better quarterback. Maybe he was put in a better situation. That's something out of control, and we'll obviously never know. But a lot of people were saying, and I've been seeing that they honestly predicted, and you can go back and pull up their tweets and stuff, that Jane Daniels was the true number one quarterback of this draft. And it seems like, we're kind of getting that Bryce Young situation. Chicago wanted Caleb Williams, and, the team behind them took who they thought was the best player in the draft or the best quarterback in the draft, and it's working out for them so far.
Yeah, I agree. Jaden Daniels has been special. He is kind of on that CJ Stroud rookie run, like you were saying. Uh, and the Cardinals, I think some of their struggles on offense was due to McBride being out. So their passing game was kind of scuffed. They don't have many weapons outside of McBride and Harrison in the passing game. So they're already coming in at a disadvantage there. And yeah, I'm surprised the Commanders' defense held up as well as they did, being one of the worst defenses in the league, in my opinion. But props to them, and I hope Jaden Daniels keeps this run up because it's special.
Yeah. I think they still gave up a lot of yards. I don't know what the total is, but yeah, they bent a lot in that game, but Commanders defense did not break essentially. They only gave up two scores. They gave up 14 points. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, they gave up almost 300 yards to the Cardinals, but, it's the Commanders' defense at the same time. But it did its job. They only gave up 14 points on the scoreboard. Moving on, the Broncos take down the Jets. And fun fact, neither New York team scored a touchdown this week.
Yeah, that was a bad showing from the Jets, and I think it kind of goes to show how good this Broncos defense is and how they might be criminally underrated. Because we saw it last week against the Bucks. I mean, they had Baker Mayfield a little lost out there. I'm not gonna lie. Baker had been playing great, and then he went on to play great again in week 4, but they struggled against the Bucks and in the run game against the Broncos, the Bucks did. And then this week we saw Brees Hall, not much production, and like you said, they didn't even let up a touchdown. And this defense might be one of the sneakiest defenses in the league, in my opinion. They got Pat Surtain out there. He's been a lockdown cornerback. If your receiver's going up against Pat Surtain in fantasy, you might as well just bench him because he's not scoring any points. And, that's kind of been the story of the year so far. And if the Broncos can get things clicking on offense, they might have a chance to not make a run. They're not making a run. Sorry, Broncos fans. But they might have a better season than people expected coming into the year. So we'll see how that works out. The Broncos need to figure out their run game. It's been pretty weak. Bo Nix, I believe, I forgot the stat, but he did not have many passing yards in that game against the Jets. So really, the defense carried them that whole game, and I think that's gonna be necessary for the Broncos to win down the stretch here.
Bo Nix was 12 of 25 for 60 yards and a touchdown. And all 60 of those yards went to Courtland Sutton. But there was one point, this game was ugly. There was one point, I think it was at halftime, Bo Nix had like negative 12 passing yards. Aaron Rodgers had like negative 5. Like this game was ugly. This game was ugly. And there's no other way to put it. It was just a field position game. And the Broncos had, if I'm stating at this correctly, of players that made catches, they had two players that had 1 reception for 0 yards, a player with 2 receptions for negative 2 yards, and a player with 2 receptions for negative 4 yards. The only other people that caught passes for positive yards outside of Courtland Sutton was 2 players for a total of 6 yards. So yeah, they got to figure out on the offense, but the fact that they were even in this game was just the defense full carrying, and I don't even know. They won. Rodgers did not look good, and he's got to look good this week against Minnesota. We'll get into that later, but if he doesn't look good, it's not gonna be good for the Jets. and their opportunity to even make the wild card at this point. Moving on, Sunday night football. We had the Ravens just torched the Bills. Derrick Henry had a monster game, almost 200 yards rushing. I think he had 3 scores or 2 scores. And yeah, I mean, this was just complete domination by the Ravens. The Ravens looking like they're coming back from that 0-2 start, so they're going to be scary. They got something to play for.
Yeah, the Ravens are looking like a great team right now. And what's scary to me is that the Ravens' passing has not been all that impressive. Zay Flowers has been a non-factor in most of the games this year for the Ravens. And without a passing game, I mean, they're literally owning the Bills, who people thought were this top 2 team only behind the Chiefs. Right here, their leading receiver on the year is Isaiah Likely with 167 yards, and most of those yards came in that first game against the Chiefs. So,
And then it's Justice Hill with
yeah.
161.
So a tight end and a running back are their top receivers right now. And then they have over 1,300 yards on the ground, which is insane. So the Ravens are a great team. I think their defense is figuring things out. We saw it week 1. They were kind of shaky on defense. They had a lot of moving pieces over the offseason on that defensive line. And I think they're starting to build some chemistry together. This defense is looking like vintage Ravens defense from last year. And this team, I think they're gonna make another run this year. So it'll be fun to watch how it pans out.
I agree. I think the Ravens got to get the right team. They're coming up for a stretch where they're looking scary, especially in the run game. And you look at their opponents are playing these next couple of games. They play the Bengals this week. Their run defense isn't the greatest. They play the Commanders. Commanders only gave up 14 points, but they gave up 105 or somewhere around there to just James Conner. So their run defense isn't that good. Then they play the Bucks that have a good run defense, and then they play the Browns. So it's going to be a test, but I think the majority of these games are winnable. And if they go on a roll here where they win, 1-2, let's say they would lose to the Bucks, even if they win the next 4 out of their 5 games, like this team is from an 0-2 start is poised to be a contender. And I mean, we saw essentially a potential playoff matchup as well. So, if it comes playoff time, we'll have to see what Buffalo needs to do to contain Derrick Henry, and we'll see if the passing game for the Ravens can keep up. Because, I mean, like you said, Likely is still has the most receiving yards. Then it's Justice Hill, who's essentially RB2 or the third down back. Mark Andrews has I don't even remember how many yards he has. He has 9 yards, I'm pretty sure, on the season. He's not doing anything, Mark Andrews. He has, in fact, 45 yards, or I'm sorry, 65 yards on 6 receptions. So he is not doing anything. Even Nelson Aguilar has more receiving yards than him. So they got to figure out the pass game, although they probably don't really need to as much, especially against some inferior opponents, if they can just run the football, whether it's with Derrick Henry or Lamar, and just throw these kind of check down passes to Justice Hill. Moving on, we'll go over this one quickly. I had to do it because of the Will Levis meme, but he got hurt in that Titans win. Apparently it was on that dive for the first down where he went Superman mode. I think they were looking at a sprained AC joint for him, if I'm not mistaken from what I read. Anyways, Mason Rudolph comes in and they put up 30 points or over 30 points for the first time, and I want to say it was 1,009 days.
Yeah, that's an interesting game there for the Titans. It gives them a lot to think about at that quarterback position. Uh, I mean, they gotta be questioning, is Will Levis really the future? My answer to that question, if I were a Titans fan, is no. Will Levis is a career backup at best. I don't think he is starting caliber level quarterback in the NFL. Although I will say the Titans, they didn't look too bad, although they were playing the depleted Miami offense, so their defense might have looked better than it really was. Um, they got their first turnover of the season on a Tyreek Hill backwards pass that was incomplete and ruled a fumble. So there's that. Um, but the Titans have some weapons, and I think their weakest point, honestly, on that whole team is quarterback, in my opinion. So the Titans have something to think about. They're probably not going to win many games this year, so they'll have a high draft pick. I think they gotta make a make a move, get a quarterback in this year's draft, and restart with a new quarterback. Because I don't think Will Levis is the answer in Tennessee.
I think Will Levis needs to sit behind someone for a couple of years. I his play is too inconsistent. I mean, we saw it in college, but I think he has potential to be a starting QB somewhere, just like how Sam Howell was. But I think he needs to get behind someone for a couple of years, like a veteran QB, and learn. But I mean, the Titans looked good. Obviously, they played a depleted team or a depleted Miami offense. Tyler Huntley was only threw 96 yards and was the leading rusher as well. So, I mean, that doesn't really help the Dolphins out. So the Dolphins are just on the struggle bus till Tua comes back, if he comes back. And like you said, we'll have to see how bad that injury is to Will Levis and whether or not there's a quarterback change for them if he comes back or whenever he comes back and he's not injured. We'll have to see if they keep with Mason Rudolph or if they go ahead and put Will Levis back in.
I believe Callahan has said that he wants to go with Levis if he's 100% healthy, but we'll see if that changes based off Mason Rudolph's play. If Mason Rudolph ends up being the starter, well, actually, they have a bye this week, I believe, so
They
they're
do,
not
yep.
playing this week. So maybe that gives time for Levis to come back, and maybe he gets to redeem himself. We'll see what happens, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to go over one more game that I didn't put on our spreadsheet, but the Lions Seahawks game. The Lions won. Obviously, the DK Metcalf fumble was big in that game. But I want to go over there were a couple questionable calls. First one was the DK Metcalf 2 catch that was incomplete with a flag for pass interference. If you watched the broadcast, you heard the official helper or whatever title it's given to the judge that helps like with the broadcast for penalties and stuff. He said the replay booth should have looked at that and that should have been 2 points. And then at the end of the game, nope, it probably wouldn't have mattered either way, even if it gets called, because they probably wouldn't have got the onside kick. But no PI against Carlton Davis on DK Metcalf when he dragged him to the ground. Not really sure what that was, but there were a couple of questionable calls in that game.
Yeah, the PI and towards the end of the game was definitely should have been called. But I think if you were watching that game, DK Metcalf in that corner were going at it all game. I mean, they had multiple PIs on the DB, I believe, and
Yeah.
offensive one on DK. So I think it was kind of the situation where both of them were going back and forth, and the refs were trying to be partial to each side. But yes, they should have called the DK one at the end of the game. But I think my biggest takeaway from both these games is that both these teams are very solid. Um, not New York, what the heck? Detroit. Uh, their run game is scary with Demo and Gibbs back there. I mean, Gibbs had 2 touchdowns. Demo had one. They probably could have ran the ball the whole game and won the game, honestly. That their run game is just that good. Um, Another big takeaway for me is that the Seahawks offense is also very good. Kenneth Walker, 3 touchdowns. That was huge. The Lions hadn't really given up big yards to anyone all year on the ground. So Seahawks run game looking good. Um, but yeah, I think both these offenses are really explosive and they'll be fun to watch this season.
The Lions gave up 133 on the ground, which is without a doubt the most they've given up all season. I do want to point out that offensive pass interference call on Tyler Lockett. That was a tough one. I kind of feel like that, kind of was pass interference a little bit, just the way he kind of went out of that break a little bit. But yeah, I mean, honestly though, Seattle as a whole, they looked good. Obviously, they gave up 42 points. That doesn't look good, but they had, I think it was 6 defensive starters out, and Julian Love got injured in that game as well. So I think this game, if you replay it in the playoffs or something, everyone's healthy. I think this game, it may be as high scoring, but I definitely think it's a little closer than the scoreboard says as well. And Detroit is cooking. Shout out to Jared Goff. He didn't miss a pass. I think he's the first quarterback ever to never have an incompletion and to pass over 200 yards. I want to say that was the record that he broke. So shout out to him. He had 2 touchdowns. He caught one as well from Amon-Ra St. Brown. But we'll have to see because they're on a bye week now. And obviously you get a win over a good team. You want to keep that momentum up. But now you're onto a bye week. So we'll have to see. They get a chance to recuperate. Their next opponent is Dallas. So, we'll have to see what type of momentum they come out with against the Cowboys the next time they play.
I just want to give a shout out real quick to the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson. He is a beast. We saw it with that play with Goff and Amon-Ra. That was awesome. We saw it last week with the hook and ladder to Gibbs. I mean, this guy's cooking up plays every week, and he's basically creating touchdowns for this team right now. And he is one of the big reasons why this team is so successful, in my opinion. And I think with that offense in mind on their team, they're going to be dominant on offense throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, he's cooking. Even Ryan Grubb, he came from Washington, the University of Washington. He's been doing good with that Seattle offense. Which brings me to another point. Let's not get too off topic, but we'll get to a little side tangent right here. I saw a chart today. It was Jackson Smith and Jigba's routes with Shane Waldron as offensive coordinator versus what he's doing this year, and it's so many more routes. They're different. They're not like these little short routes. And then you look at what DJ Moore had last year, and you look what he has now with Shane Waldron. It almost looks like the exact same. Like the chart's almost exactly identical to what JSN was running last year. So, I mean, you can say whatever about Caleb Williams, but Shane Waldron is not helping that Chicago offense either. That guy, there was a reason, when they quote unquote fired Pete Carroll and they hired Mike McDonald, they cleaned the house because he's not a good offensive coordinator.
Yeah, Waldron, I saw DJ Moore I saw this thing about how DJ Moore is upset with the way that Chicago offense is running. DJ Moore has been a deep threat most of his career. That was a big part of their game last year in Chicago with Justin Fields at quarterback. And this year, Caleb Williams only has 6 passes over 20 yards. And DJ Moore is not, I don't think he's thriving in this offense right now. And I think that's a big part of it is the offensive scheme on this team. So we'll see how that shakes out in Chicago. It's something to watch down the line here.
Yeah, I agree. The crazy thing still is that he still leads them in receiving so far. So, yeah. And I mean, Caleb Williams isn't connecting on a lot of those deep balls whenever, they get the chance. And most of them looks like they're being thrown to Rome Odunze. So, it's just going to be, we'll have to see what happens in Chicago type thing. Moving on to the headlines for the week. This was looking, a little iffy, the headlines. But we got some big ones, especially at the end we'll get to. But first off, we're going to throw it back to that Giants-Cowboys game. We got 2 big injuries. Malik Neighbors' concussion and Micah Parsons' high ankle sprain. Now, I think the Cowboys are playing, or they're practicing as if Parsons is not going to play. According to this, CBS Sports, he was in a walking boot on Monday, which was yesterday. And then I haven't seen too many updates on Malik Neighbors, but I think he's going to play this week. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, if these guys are inactive for both of these teams, they're at a big disadvantage. These guys are cornerstones of each team. Malik Neighbors is a huge blow. He's really inspired this New York offense that has actually looked somewhat decent recently, especially the passing game. He's making Daniel Jones look good. But that Dallas defense has been struggling, and with Micah Parsons out, if he's out, no telling what they'll be able to do on defense, because even with him in, they weren't executing very well from week to week. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, the Cowboys are playing the Steelers this week, so that's going to be a big game. And then the Giants are playing Seattle in Seattle. We saw Monday Night Football last year what happened when Daniel Jones played Seattle. Didn't go too well. And if he doesn't have Malik Neighbors, I just don't see, any chance of this game being competitive for the Giants, even with a kind of depleted Seahawks defense due to injuries. Up next, we have the Rashee Rice injury. Patrick Mahomes throws an interception. Here he comes down the field trying to look a little Mahomey-like, and he gets his wide receiver 1 injured. It's looking like it's an ACL injury from all the articles that I've read. So if that is a torn ACL, obviously he's going to be done for the year. So that is a big, big blow for the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chiefs are already without Hollywood Brown for the rest of the year, and Pacheco's on IR, so he'll probably make a late return this season. But this Chiefs wide receiver room is bad. Juju Smith-Schuster, I guess, would be their number 1. Maybe Justin Watson.
I feel like it'd have to be Xavier Worthy, honestly. I feel like he would be.
True. Xavier Worthy is good, but ever since week 1, he hasn't had that much involvement in the past game, so he probably gets an uptick in his volume. But this Chiefs offense hasn't been good, really, to be honest. They put up 17 against the Chargers or whatever.
Yeah.
And Mahomes has not looked great. I believe he had, I don't know if this is right, but I don't think he had over 200 passing yards in that game against the Chargers.
Oh, look.
Chiefs offense has just been bad, and this is going to make them even worse. Rashee Rice has looked like Mahomes' number 1 target throughout the season. Travis Kelce's got to step up. This whole team's got to step up on offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make a trade for a wide receiver here if they want to be competitive this season.
Mahomes had 245 yards last game. I mean,
oh, okay, never mind then. But
Kelce needs to step up. I mean, he kind of stepped up last week. He had 7 receptions for 89 yards, but I'm pretty sure that's more yards and receptions he's had than the entire rest of this year so far combined. So he's gonna have to step up big for them, and I agree. And we'll get into that with one of our later headlines. They need a trade for a wide receiver. I saw a couple rumors, maybe Tyreek Hill, but I highly doubt that happens. But there's another trade rumor that popped up this afternoon that we're going to get into after a couple more injury and headlines and stuff, which I feel like would be a great acquisition for Patrick Mahomes. Moving on, though, we'll make this one short. It's only Christian Watson, but he's got an ankle injury, expected to be out. Feels like every year he's super injury prone and just, there's an extended period of time where he's on IR.
Yeah, this one wasn't really his fault, to be honest. If you watch the play, he kind of gets wrapped up, um, trying to go make a play on the ball. Not really an avoidable injury here. It's honestly just unlucky. But it gives a lot of opportunities to other people in this Packers wide receiver core. We saw it last week when Watson, or not last week, last year when Watson was out. This Packers wide receiver core really stepped up, and that's kind of when this offense started firing on all cylinders late last year. So I'm not saying the Watson injury was a good thing, but maybe we see a spark in this offense. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Up next, Christian McCaffery came back from Germany. Now, apparently, he's got, I think the official documentation was Achilles tendonitis, I want to say it was. Not
Yeah.
in one, but both Achilles, which brought up some other questions that I saw, like how does this happen, stuff like that, but why wasn't this essentially documented? And he's going to be out for more time than whatever. There's a chance, he might not even play the rest of the year. He'll be back, for like week 16 and the playoffs.
Yeah, this injury is really strange to me. Like, how do you not know that this injury is existent before the season? It's really confusing. Um, and how do you get two Achilles injuries on both Achilles? Like, that makes no sense to me. And it to have no like injury report going into the season
Mm-hmm.
is insane.
Yeah.
And I don't know, something is fishy there. Um, I hope McCaffrey's all right. But like you said, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Christian McCaffrey until the playoffs, if the 49ers make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's got to be the Madden curse. Don't know what else it could be. It's just a strange situation for that. And the fact that like he had to go overseas to see a doctor and then it was revealed that both Achilles are injured. Yeah, I don't know. Something's just not adding up. So we'll see. We'll end up seeing what happens, how much longer he's out for as well. But so right now, Jordan Mason's going to be toting the rock for San Francisco. All right, next up we have Von Miller. He's suspended for 4 games for a violation of the personal conduct policy, which the article from ESPN says this stems from an assault on his girlfriend last year, which later he turned himself in and was charged with 3rd-degree felony assault. I don't think he's even played that much this year, Von Miller, so this is kind of just like, I guess he's just not going to play. He's not getting paid for these games either, by the way.
Yeah, Von Miller, I believe, was just coming in on like 3rd downs, um, just to like get pressure on the quarterback, I guess. So he hasn't been that active in the defense. Really, let me see here. I believe, let's see, he has 5 tackles on the season. So, but 3 of those are sacks. So he's only been coming down in on those 3rd downs to try to get pressure on the quarterback. So without Von Miller, they don't have much of an edge rush, I guess, in Buffalo. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Um, but I don't think the Buffaloes will be very impacted by this suspension. I think this is more of just like a mark on Von Miller's career, in my opinion. Um, yeah, he's kind of gone downhill ever since he left Denver, really. Very underwhelming seasons since Denver. So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
about it for that situation.
he's 35. It says he only played 9 snaps last week against Baltimore anyways. So, like, yeah, I don't know. I think Unk just needs to hang it up and call it a career at this point. Especially, the suspension, he's not going to play for 4 games. So it's just, yeah, it's just
Yeah, it might be
not good
time to
for put the cleats
put the
up.
fries in the bag, bro.
Yep. We're going to get to our final headline, which popped maybe 3-4 hours ago, not super long ago. But Davante Adams trade rumors, they were a little, swirling around in the media and everything. Antonio Pierce liked to post about, Davante Adams playing his last snap in Las Vegas. But now it was confirmed that the Raiders are opened up to trading a pick. They're looking for a second round pick plus compensation. I'm bringing this back to the Chiefs. I think there's one or two places I think he ends up. The first place is Kansas City. They need a wide receiver, especially with Rashee Rice out for potentially the year. That would be a lethal combo. The second one, does Davante Adams want to link back up with Aaron Rodgers? But this also had me thinking, if he does that, I don't think Aaron Rodgers gets rid of Allen Lazard. So if this happens, Davante Adams goes to the Jets, and I think Mike Williams gets traded. I just think if Davante Adams goes to the Jets, Mike Williams is the odd man out.
Look, I don't think the Jets can make this trade, really. I think their receiver room is already kind of stacked. I think they're paying too much money for Rodgers to even acquire Adams. I mean, if they did, it would be Adams, Wilson, Lazard probably at wide receiver 3. And then, like you said, that kind of just leaves Mike Williams out of the picture, really. So that could be an option. My most likely option, in my opinion, would be the Chiefs. I mean, this Chiefs team, they want to make the three-peat this year. If Mahomes and Adams linked up, that would be one of the best wide receiver QB duos we've ever seen,
That'd be
honestly.
crazy.
It would be actually so insane. Another sleeper team I could see for Davante Adams to go to would be, where'd he go? I was just looking at them.
The
The
Pittsburgh
Baltimore
Steelers.
Ravens.
Oh,
Because we talked about how their pass offense has not been good this year. And if they had a guy like Davante Adams in that wide receiver room, who knows what could happen in Baltimore? I mean,
yeah,
he,
that would be really scary, that team then.
I always hold out hope that he returns to the Packers, but probably not.
I doubt it. I doubt he would go to the Packers. Like I said, Chiefs, you bring up the Ravens. Honestly, this may be a little thrown out there in left field, but Pittsburgh even? George Pickens, Davante Adams, Justin Fields? Like that could be something. They could cook something there, especially with that defense. I feel like they'd potentially would want Fields to throw the ball more than he already is, but that could be something as well. But there's a lot of teams where I don't see him going to, or essentially, they don't need him because they already got, at least 2 solid wide receivers. And I don't think there's going to be teams that are willing to give up a second round, especially if they're not that good or they don't think they got a chance at the playoffs this year.
Yeah, in my opinion, this has to be a team who thinks they're contending this year. So it's not going to be one of your bottom of the league teams. So that's why I think the Chiefs are probably the ultimate landing spot. Um, there's a few other teams that could compete, like you said. The Jets could be an option that Rodgers would probably push for that. I mean, Davante Adams has kind of been his top target throughout the years of his career. But yeah,
I agree. Those are all the headlines for this week. Well, the major ones at least. Injuries, all that stuff. We will have to see how that Davante Adams, situation pans out, how it trades. If there's a trade, whatever happens, we'll have to just wait and see how that plays out. Moving on to our predictions. Man, it was a rough one for me this week again. Not just over here with my college picks as well. We're slacking a little bit. It's been a rough 2 weeks. I went 6-10, which I think I went 6-10 back-to-back weeks, I want to say. Not a good look. That is correct. I went 6-10 back-to-back weeks. I'm sitting at a total overall of 30-34, so I got to make some stuff up.
Yeah, I went 9-7, so positive week for me. It's still not great though, but I am positive on the season now. I'm 33-31, so I have that in my bag now.
All right. Week 4 predictions. We're going to start off with Thursday Night Football. The Bucks at the Falcons.
This one will be a good game. I struggled to pick a winner here just because we saw the Falcons. They beat the Saints last week. They didn't look too bad, but the Bucks also looked good against the Eagles. But at the same time, this Eagles team really wasn't that good last week. I mean, Davante Smith and AJ Brown were both out, so this defense is unproven in my opinion against the Eagles. Um, but that being said, I'm taking the Bucks. I liked what they were doing on offense. This Atlanta defense has been subpar compared to what they were supposed to be coming into the season. Their offense has been all right. Still, Bijan has not been the guy that they were really hoping for in Atlanta. Kyle Pitts has been a non-factor too. 0 points for my fantasy team last week, so that's rough.
Feels bad.
But I think it's got to be the Bucks here. I think they're my favorites to win this division, and they're looking good on offense and really on defense too. So, yep.
I'm taking the Bucks as well. I mean, the defense looks good against Philly. I think they just need to contain the big play, especially the big run play from Bijan Robinson. If they do that, Kirk Cousins, it's a primetime game. So we'll see how Kirk Cousins plays. But I feel like if they make their run defense is pretty good, Tampa. So they're going to make Atlanta throw the ball. I think Cousins is going to make a mistake or two. And as long as they don't give up the big play, whether it's on the ground or through the air, I feel like this team is looking good. The offense is clicking, If one player isn't looking so good, like Mike Evans had a couple games where he wasn't really doing too much. Chris Godwin took over. Rashad White wasn't having a rough stretch. Bucky Irvin's taken over. So they got players where if, another player or a good player is struggling a little bit in that game, someone else can take over and go ahead and, take over that game. So that being said, I'm taking the Bucks, like I said. Moving on, we have our first international game of the year. This one is in London. We have the Jets versus the Vikings.
At first glance, this is a Vikings win, 100%. But then you realize it's an overseas game, and overseas games are the wackiest games ever. So for that reason, I'm taking the Jets. I think we didn't see much of it last week from the Packers because they were down most of the game, but I think Breece Hall will be able to expose this Vikings front defensive line, although they have looked good this season. I know the Jets are the underdog in this game, but I think the Jets are going to be the better team in London. If this game was played in the US, I think the Vikings win. But something about Aaron Rodgers going to London and beating the 4-0 Minnesota Vikings just sounds right to me. I think the Vikings are playing the toughest defense that they played in the New York Jets. I know they played the 49ers, but they were kind of injury prone, I guess. So I think this Jets secondary especially will match up well with the receivers for Minnesota. Their defensive line has looked good for the Jets as well. I mean, they held the Broncos to 10 points. That's not saying much, but still, not many points there. Patriots to 3. I mean, they're having good defensive showings, so I think this could be a Jets win.
See, I was looking at this. I was looking at the trends as well. Minnesota is 3-0 in London. Haven't lost a game every time they play London. But the designated home team, which is also the Vikings, since 2022 has only won one game. So that being said, I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't. It's two stats against each other essentially. The Vikings haven't lost ever in London, but the stats since 2022, only one team has won as the designated home team. I mean, like you said, it's probably going to be a wacky game. It's going to be like some. All these games are wacky. Something goofy is going to happen, or there's going to be like no scoring, and it's going to put everyone to sleep. But look, if the Vikings played like they did last week, and the Jets, especially the offense, played like they did last week, this isn't going to be a competition. We'll just have to see which team essentially is, you know, more adjusted to being over the pond, and we'll just have to see. We'll see. We'll have to see if that Jets defense gives Sam Darnold any problem. This is a revenge game for him as well, technically. So we'll have to see what happens. But I'm taking the Vikings, and hopefully they'll break that curse of only one win since 2022 as a home team.
Another thing just to add real quick, Sam Darnold, I think he's looked the worst he has all season against the Packers defense last week. I'm just putting that out there. So, will we see a regression in Sam Darnold's play? Eventually, probably so. Will this be the week? We'll see. This might be the turning point in the season for the Vikings. We'll see. But yeah, I'm very optimistic about this Jets team.
Up next, we have Carolina at Chicago.
This is a tough one. Um, I like both teams here. They're both kind of bad, but DeAndre Swift looked really good last week. I don't know if that's because they were playing the Rams. Um, but yeah, the run game looked really good for the Bears last week. But I like the Red Rocket to win this one. I think Carolina's going to take this one in Chicago. This offense for Carolina has just looked good the last 2 weeks with Andy Dalton at the helm. Andy Dalton has 5 touchdowns and 1 interception over the last 2 weeks. And the main reason why they lost to Cincinnati was because of their defense. But the problem is the Chicago Bears have not been good on offense. So I think this Panthers defense will be able to maintain enough, get enough stops, get maybe a turnover or two on Caleb Williams, and that'll help the Panthers win this game in Chicago.
Dude, this was I want to say the toughest matchup for me to pick this week. Like I still don't know who's gonna win. You know, obviously Carolina's been looking better since Andy Dalton has been at the helm. The Chicago offense has been rough. Man, this is tough. Um, I think the question is gonna be. I think Andy Dalton can get the ball downfield. Can the um can the Panthers or can the Bears have an offense essentially that isn't just running the ball and check downs? But this is gonna be tough. You know, I don't know. I'm still 50-50 on this, but I think I'm going to have to go with the Panthers on this one. It's just, I think it'll be comical if Andy Dalton comes in, beats Caleb Williams, and Bears fans are going to be angered at this essentially. Up next, we have Baltimore at Cincinnati.
Looking at a division game here, this is kind of up in the air for me. Um, it, at first glance, it looks kind of one-sided towards the Ravens. But we looked at that Cincinnati offense last week. It looked pretty good. So we'll see what happens this week. But I'm think I'm gonna have to take the Baltimore Ravens. I think their defense matches up well against Cincinnati. Even though they're playing at Cincinnati, I think this is a good opportunity for the Ravens. Get to 3-2, have a winning record. And another thing is the Bengals' run defense has not been good. Chuba Hubbard looked great against the Bengals. Ramondre Stevenson looked great against the Bengals. Heck, even Brian Robinson looked good against the Bengals. So their run offense or defense has not been good. I think that's the big reason why the Baltimore Ravens are going to win this game.
I agree. I'm taking the Raven. I'm taking the Ravens as well. They're just that run offense is just going to carry them. They don't need to throw the ball. Cincinnati's run defense is bad, and I think Baltimore is just going to, Derrick Henry's going to have another monster game, at least probably at a minimum 1 touchdown. Lamar's probably going to have like 50 on the ground as well. So it's just going to be all Baltimore. And yeah, I think the Bengals' playoffs hopes are just honestly probably gone after this game. Up next, we have Miami at New England.
I can't pick Miami until they make some offensive changes, man. They looked terrible again last week. I'm gonna have to go with the New England Patriots. I think this was a time for the Patriots to get back on track, back in the win column. They haven't won a game since week 1, a 3-game loss streak. But I think against Miami, they'll be able to get their run game going back, which is kind of what they relied on those first 2 weeks. Especially if the Miami offense isn't clicking like it has the last 2 weeks. This should be an easy game for the Patriots, in my opinion.
I agree. I'm taking New England as well. I mean, yeah, the Dolphins' offense hasn't looked good, and their defense, especially against the run, you look back a couple weeks against, Seattle, they gave up 92 yards, I think, to Zach Charbonnet. James Cook had 3 touchdowns against them when they played Buffalo. So a run-heavy New England team is going to run the ball against this Miami Dolphins defense, and they're not the greatest at stopping the run. And just like, honestly, kind of the Baltimore-Cincinnati game, it's going to be run heavy, run. And unless the Dolphins can turn around on offense, I just think it'll eventually catch up to them. Even if the Patriots only score 16, 17 points, it's going to catch up to them. And I'm taking New England until, we see some decent quarterback play, even mediocre quarterback play from one of the Dolphins' backup quarterbacks. Up next, we have Cleveland at Washington.
Man, how can you not take the Commanders after what they did last week? They look so good. I know the Browns defense is supposed to be good, but the Browns offense has not been able to put it together. Deshaun Watson has not looked good once again. I don't know how many more opportunities Deshaun Watson should really get, to be honest. Yeah, the Browns don't have much going for them. For that reason, I'm taking Commanders. That offense is looking great as of recently. If that defense makes the jump, I think this will be an easy game for the Commanders.
I'm taking the Commanders. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's that Commanders offense is looking really good right now. The defense could use improvements, but I mean, I think this Cleveland defense is doing all they can, and it's just not enough with the way the Cleveland offense is working. And yeah, I mean, some of it was Deshaun Watson, some of it wasn't Deshaun Watson last week, but Deshaun Watson needs to step it up even more than he is. I think they're getting Nick Chubb back within the next couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that'll help, but they're still going to be probably 2 weeks without him. So it's going to be Deshaun Watson's going to have to pick it up. I think the defense is capable of picking it up, but when the offense isn't doing close to anything, it's just hard for that defense to keep up, or for any defense to keep up. And with the way Washington and their offense is looking, Commanders are going to win this game. Up next, we have Indianapolis at Jacksonville, and I don't think it's been determined yet if Anthony Richardson is playing or not this week.
Yeah, Anthony Richardson went out with that hip injury last week against, I don't remember who they playing, I'm not gonna lie. But anyways,
Pittsburgh, I
Joe
think.
Flacco. Oh yeah, you're right. How could I forget? I was literally watching the game. Anyways, the Colts, they didn't look too bad under Joe Flacco. Um, in my opinion, the offense probably looked better under Joe Flacco than Anthony Richardson. With consistency wise, they were able to run the ball a lot better. The receivers were more involved in the passing game, I feel like. That being said, I think I'm going to take the Jaguars here. It might be a surprise. They didn't look too bad against Houston, which I was kind of surprised. They only lost to Houston by 3 or 4 points. Um, it's at Jacksonville, especially if that. And another thing to note, Jonathan Taylor has an ankle sprain. So he's up in the air for this week. So if he's not playing, that's even more leaning towards the Jaguars win, in my opinion. And I liked what I saw from Jacksonville last week, although they didn't win. They kind of got back on track, in my opinion. This isn't going to be a playoff Jacksonville that we were kind of expecting coming into the season, but I don't hate what they did last week. And this game's at home for them. And it's a division matchup, which they can always go one way or the other. But let me look at the stats real quick. Trevor Lawrence was 18 of 33 for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nothing to be too crazy about, but it's a big turnaround, in my opinion, from what he's looked like in the last couple weeks. That being said, I'm taking the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this on ESPN, the Gamecast, the matchup prediction is literally, it's almost 50-50. It's 50.7 in favor of Jacksonville and 48.9 in favor of Indianapolis. The spread is ±3 to even. So this is like, we don't know if Anthony Richardson's playing, but I'm taking the Jaguars with this game. I just think they looked good against Houston, like you said. I think this is bounce back. I have no idea what happened to Etienne that game. Apparently, he got injured. He injured his shoulder on the first play of the game without him even having the ball, touching the ball. So I have no idea what happened. I don't even think he has an injury designation anymore. Like, he barely had one for that game. And he didn't run the ball a lot. Tank Bigsby ran the ball a lot because of his injury. But I think Etienne is going to take that workload back. And the Colts defense is shaky at times, so maybe breaks off a huge run. They're susceptible to big plays. The Colts and the Jaguars love taking deep shots with Trevor Lawrence to Brian Thomas Jr. So expect one or two of those passes, big time passes, to connect. And we'll have to see. If Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, that's a disadvantage for the Colts. If Anthony Richardson doesn't play, maybe it's a disadvantage. There's less mobility the Jaguars have to worry about for a quarterback position. Flacco can get it done, but we saw, there were times outside of that magical run with Cleveland where he looked like, he was kind of washed, like he was just making bad decisions and stuff. So I think, though, the Jaguars, they're going to get their first win of the season against a division opponent. And, I mean, they're not making the playoffs, but this is going to be like, the 9-8 or the 8-9, 7-10, whatever record it is nowadays. Colts Jaguars game. Up next, we have Buffalo at Houston.
I'm taking the Buffalo Bills here. They lost to the Ravens last week. They kind of got shut out. But I think it's a bounce back week for them against the Bills or the Texans. The Texans defense did not look great against Jacksonville of all people. I think this will be a big bounce back week for James Cook, who was basically silent in that game against Baltimore, but I think that has something to do with the fact that they got down very early in that game. So the Buffalo Bills will bounce back here. Josh Allen will bounce back. This will be a win for the Bills at the Texans. And this Texans team is kind of shaky. I'm not gonna lie. They haven't looked great. A lot of people had them favorites going into that Minnesota game, and they lost. Not a great performance against the Jags. So for that reason, I'm taking the Bills.
I'm taking the Texans. I mean, I think either way, it's going to be a really good game. Is if the Texans can get pressure and have good pressure on Josh Allen and force him to make mistakes, I think the Texans are going to win this game. Josh Allen hasn't thrown an interception yet. I'm not sure if he's fumbled yet, like lost a fumble yet. I'm not 100% sure. I will say, though, as of right now, Khalil Shakir is questionable with an ankle injury. I'm not sure what his status is. He did play in that game after he got injured against Baltimore, and then obviously they threw in all the backups, so he didn't even play the whole game on top of that. But they got some good defensive players that are questionable as well. Taylor Rapp's questionable. Terrell Bernard, Taron Johnson, they're all questionable. And if Joe Mixon plays, I think the Texans have a really good chance of winning this. And the run game hasn't been good without Joe Mixon, without Dameon Pierce. Cam Akers hasn't looked good, but CJ Stroud, he's made a couple of mistakes these past couple of games, but I think he's going to bounce back, lock in. And especially if they have Joe Mixon, I feel like this is going to be a Texans win against a kind of depleted Bills defense, but it's still somehow magically working. And it's going to be about Josh Allen ball security as well, especially if his number one wide receiver is out. Moving on, we have Las Vegas at Denver.
This is an interesting matchup. I think really this could go either way. The Raiders looked good last week. The Broncos just held the Jets to 9 points, who are supposed to be one of the more explosive offenses in the league. And without Davante, I'm assuming he's not going to play again this week.
I don't think
So,
so.
so there you got Pat Surtain, who can basically lock down any Raiders receiver with ease. Um, the Broncos have had a decent pass rush. They got a lot of sacks recently. So I'm going to take the Broncos here. This is a home game for the Broncos as well, which plays into their favor a little bit. But what I'm looking here for the Broncos is to get their offense clicking, because their defense will be able to handle the Raiders here. Their rush game for the Raiders has not been good. Zamir White has been not good. The pass game, it's looked all right. They haven't played the best opponents, so it's kind of hard to tell. I guess Jacoby Myers is that new wide receiver one there, which is interesting. But I think, like I said, Surtain's not gonna have an issue with Jacoby Myers or Trey Tucker or even Brock Bowers. I don't know who he's gonna line up against. Honestly, I don't know because this core is just not very good anymore. But they pulled out a win last week. The Raiders did. That being said, Broncos are my favorites here.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I'm taking Denver as well. They didn't score a lot of points last week, but the defense did the job. The defense is more than capable of taking down a less powerful offense in the Raiders, especially without Davante Adams. So it's honestly, it's going to be, can Bo Nix and that offense move the ball? He didn't do good against the Jets, but we saw him move the ball down the field against Tampa, who has a pretty good defense. So we'll have to see what, I guess, version of Bo Nix we get, essentially. But, even if he doesn't play his greatest game ever, I feel like this defense of the Broncos is going to make Gardner Minshew throw into a couple mistakes. Especially if he tries to Pat Surtain, he's going to lock up whoever he ends up guarding. Maybe he stays on one side. Maybe he follows someone. Honestly, if no idea, and it's in Denver as well. But I'm not too confident, even though they won. I'm not too confident in this Raiders team as a whole. And I think the Broncos, they're coming off you could say, a big win against the Jets. And I think they keep the momentum rolling. They beat the Bucks, they beat the Jets, and they're going to keep that rolling. They're going to beat the Raiders. Right, up next, we have Arizona at San Francisco.
Arizona's been very disappointing to me in the last few weeks. They got blown out by the Lions, blown out by the Commanders, and it just looks like this team can't compete, honestly. So I'm gonna go with the 49ers here. 49ers home game. It's gonna be tough for Arizona to overcome this. I think they get McBride back, but still, their offense is gonna be able to do enough. And the 49ers defense or offense, in my opinion, should be able to run over this Arizona offense, even without their top players. I'm looking for a Brandon Ayuk bounce back game here. He's been kind of silent the whole season. So I want to see them get Brandon Ayuk involved. And I think this will be his game to do that against this just flat out bad Arizona secondary. So that'll be interesting. 49ers are my winners this week.
I'm taking San Francisco. Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals gave up 42 points to Washington. And you could argue that even without CMC, San Francisco is a better offense in general. They got Debo back, I think it was last week. Yeah, he played last week. He did his thing. And yeah, I mean, the Cardinals offense is going to have to keep pace with the San Francisco offense, especially with how disappointing the defense has been for Arizona. So, I mean, we may see another blowout. San Francisco is going to win this. We may see another blowout. Debo may go off. Someone's going to go off, whether it's Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, even like Jordan Mason. Someone's going to just go off, have a monster game. It's going to be one of those 3 or 4 guys. And yeah, I mean, unless, Arizona scores on pretty much every drive, I don't think they're going to win this game. Up next, we have Green Bay at the Rams.
Rams looked bad last week. I'm not gonna lie. They lost to the Bears. I think this should be a win for the Packers. It's at SoFi. Packers fans travel well. This will probably be a home game for the Packers. Jordan Love, he was just coming back last week, but he still threw for 4 touchdowns and 400 plus yards, even though he had 3 interceptions. So he's probably not going to throw for 400 yards again, but I think this offense is back. Josh Jacobs will have a big week. This Rams offense or defense is not great against the run. They're outmatched on offense too. Hopefully, I believe Jair Alexander is expected to play this week. He was a big loss for the Packers last week and a big reason why they lost that game. But yeah, the Rams wide receiver 1 is like Tutu Atwell or something right now. And they got Jordan Whittington back there too. So the biggest thing is stopping Kyren Williams. I think they'll be able to do that. Outside of week 1 against the Eagles, the rush defense hasn't been bad. I think the Packers will be able to win this game.
Yeah, I'm taking Green Bay. I mean, yeah, you said it. I mean, Jordan Love, I wasn't sure how he was going to do coming back, which he threw 3 interceptions, but he threw for like a ridiculous amount of yards and had 4 scores. So I think we're in the same. I think like he's not going to throw as many touchdowns or even as many passing yards, but the Rams are just, they lost to the Bears. The offense didn't look too good, and the defense for Green Bay is as good, or if not, I'd say as good as Chicago. So it's going to be, similar in that sense. And Green Bay may run away with this one. The Rams defense doesn't look too good, like you said, outside of, pressuring the quarterback. So, as long as Jordan Love's like whatever he needs to do, check down, escape the pocket, whatever he may need to do to get out of that pass rush. But besides that, it may be an ugly game for the Rams, way worse than it was against Chicago. So I'm taking Green Bay. Up next, we have the Giants at Seattle.
This should be a blowout win for the Seahawks. They looked good against the Lions, even though they lost. Giants, possibly without Malik Neighbors. That would be a big blow. They definitely would not be able to win this game. Even if they do have Malik Neighbors, I think Seattle will be able to handle them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The Giants, their run defense isn't bad. Their pass defense is bad, though. And I think that's where Seattle will be able to beat this team through the air. DK, JSN, Lockett, they're going to outmatch this Giants secondary, and it should be a win for the Seahawks easily.
I'm taking Seattle. This is going to be a bounce back game for them. Yeah, especially if Malik Neighbors doesn't play. I mean, that Giants offense is cooked. Even with Seattle down like 6 starters, potentially 7 if Julian Love doesn't play, I think. I still think Seattle's going to win this game. The Giants defense isn't the greatest. Granted, they did only let up 20 points to Dallas, but Geno played really good against Detroit. Kenneth Walker's back. He looked good against Detroit. He's probably going to go off again. And the defense, I mean, they gave him 42 points, but they didn't play super bad outside of not being able to pressure Jared Goff. And the Giants have a way worse offensive line than the Lions do. So I think, they may get some pressure on Daniel Jones. And, as long as they don't have a coverage bust, Seattle corners should lock Daniel Jones' wide receivers up. Daniel Jones probably going to do something stupid, strip sack. He's probably, or, throw an interception. So this game's a little closer, I think, if Malik Neighbors plays. But especially if he doesn't play due to that concussion, I just don't see any way the Giants are going to win this game unless, a miracle happens, essentially. Moving on to our Sunday night football game, we have Dallas at Pittsburgh.
This will be a fun one. Dallas, Micah Parsons' status up in the air. I know he wants to play. We'll see if he can play in this game. I'm taking the Steelers, though. I think the biggest issue for this Dallas team has been the run. They were able to kind of turn around with Devin Singletary last week, but I feel like this Steelers offense is kind of underrated. They got the ball moving late in that game against the Colts. Justin Fields had 2 rushing touchdowns and a passing touchdown on top of it. So they were definitely making plays. And I think this game is a Steelers home game, which also plays into the factors here. Honestly, Cowboys aren't going to be able to run the ball. Their run offense has been terrible. They're going to have to rely on CD and Ferguson, in my opinion. I don't think that'll be enough to get it done. I'm taking the Steelers here.
I'm taking Dallas. I mean, Pittsburgh's 3-1. Justin Fields has been playing good. We saw him a little shaky last week against the Colts, who don't have the greatest defense, although he was able to shake that off with some rushing touchdowns. But I mean, if Micah Parsons plays, that's going to be big. If DeMarcus Lawrence plays, that's going to be big as well. And I think, the running game's not good for Dallas. It never was good this season. So Dak Prescott's going to throw the ball a lot. It's just going to be a matter of can the Steelers lock up CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson, Jalen Tolbert, which, who knows? It depends on how locked in Dak is. I'm going with the Cowboys. I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to come down to some turnovers. I think whether I think it's going to come down to like a Justin Fields fumble or a couple interceptions by Prescott. It's going to be the difference maker in this game. I think this game's going to be way closer than people expect, though. So we will we'll have to see. I think we'll find out later in the week as well if Micah Parsons is playing and DeMarcus Lawrence is playing. That's going to help as well decide who may have the edge in this game. Moving on to Monday Night Football, we have New Orleans at Kansas City.
Look, until the Chiefs can acquire another receiver or something, I think the Saints are going to win this game. You know, the Saints defense, I mean, they're going to be able to handle this Chiefs wide receiver room. And their defense isn't bad. I mean, the Chiefs don't really have a run game right now. Kareem Hunt is going to be the lead back this week, I believe. So that's a new development. But I don't think they're going to be able to get it done. Someone's got to beat the Chiefs. I think this is the Saints' week. Their offense looked good last week. It was kind of like a bounce back week for them last week. 2-2. This is a big win for the Saints. This will show if they're pretenders or contenders. In my opinion, I think they get the job done with Kamara. I feel like Kamara is going to be able to run on this team. And I'm not sure if Taysom Hill is going to play this week, but he was a big factor in that game last
He
week. I
had two
believe he had
touchdowns last week, I
yeah,
think.
he had 2 touchdowns, but he also went out of the game with an injury. I'm not sure what the injury was. I don't remember. But he'll also be a big factor in this game. I feel like the Chiefs defense is good, but if the Saints are able to mix in these plays with Taysom Hill and Kamara, it'll hopefully open up some opportunities for Shaheed down the field. They'll be able to get this offense flowing, and I think they're gonna win this game.
Yeah, Taysom Hill suffered a rib injury, so we'll have to see if he plays or not. But that being said, I'm taking the Saints as well. I saw on a Kurt Benkirk tweet, he was like, I feel like the Saints are going to win this game, and I kind of agree with him. The Saints, they play stingy at times when they need to. The offense was clicking last week, It didn't really click the week before, but this week, last week, Derek Carr spread the ball out. Olave had 8 catches. I think Shaheed had 8 catches as well. Kamara had some catches. He was spreading the ball out, whatever. The Saints offense starts to be bad when it's all Alvin Kamara, run, check down to Alvin Kamara, run again, check down to Alvin Kamara, deep shot that doesn't hit, and it's just like all Alvin Kamara. It just doesn't seem to work out. So as long as Derek Carr, spreads the ball around, does all that good stuff, I think the Saints are going to win this game. Obviously, they're going to have to step up the Chiefs, the wide receivers, Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Justin Watson. They're all going to have to step up. Travis Kelce's going to have to step up because, look, Patrick Mahomes and Harrison Buckner, they can't do it all, man. They can't do it all. They need some people to get them down the field to score or get into a position to score. And yeah, I don't know. It's just going to be tough until they get a wide receiver, I think, like a true number 1 wide receiver that isn't a rookie or 36-year-old Travis Kelce, who hasn't been playing the greatest outside of last game. Anyways, those are all the predictions for this week. We have some teams on some bye weeks. The bye week starts this week, so for the next, I don't know how long it is, 11 weeks maybe. We'll see some. We won't have as many matchups, but we'll get into there. So hopefully I do better than last week, the last 2 weeks, because I really need to. Moving on to fantasy football, though. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot the auto lock. Moving on to the auto lock. Who is your auto lock for this week?
My auto lock is going to be the 49ers against the Cardinals. Look, Cardinals team can't get it done on defense. 49ers are going to run all over them. Got to be a 49ers win, easy.
Dude, that's a good one. This one may be a little scary, but I'm taking Ravens over Bengals. I think that run game, they're gonna put up 200, close to 300 yards on the ground. I think Baltimore and Cincinnati's not gonna be able to stop it. Derrick Henry is probably gonna have another 150 yards on the ground. Lamar's gonna have a good amount. Even Justice Hill is probably gonna have a good amount. I'm taking the Ravens over the Bengals is my auto lock. All right, moving on to fantasy football. I almost had a comeback last week. I fell short by about 8 points. Mike Gesicki didn't help me out. He had literally a tenth of a point. He had one reception for -9 yards. And, if I have literally probably any competent tight end and Trevor Etienne doesn't get hurt on like the first play of the game on a ball he doesn't even have, I probably win this matchup.
Yeah, my team, it's looking all right. I mean, this is kind of a weird week for me. Gibbs, who's been kind of my number 2 running back in there with Jonathan Taylor, is on a bye. And Jonathan Taylor has that ankle sprain. I think he's maybe expected to play. I don't really know, to be honest. So I have to move Jerome Ford into my RB2, he was my flex last week. He did all right, but he's not really someone I want to have in my RB2 spot. Just kind of a weird play there. And then that means I have Cortland Sutton in my flex as of right now. I might make some changes. I am trying to get a few waiver wires. I'm probably not going to get these, especially the first one.
I have waiver
Trying.
wire. I'm first again because I'm last in our league.
All right, then who are you going for here?
So my only waiver claim right now is I'm dropping Gesicki. I'm picking up Tucker Kraft. I need a tight end. He's been decent this year. So hopefully he'll stay decent this year or for the rest of the season. I also have a trade. We'll see if it even gets looked at or accepted. I'm proposing Komet and Rashid Shaheed for Dallas Goedert and Josh Downs. So, we'll see what happens there. If for some reason I'm going to start, because I'm going to get him because I'm first on our waiver wire, I'm going to start Tucker Kraft this week. For some reason, if he doesn't do good, maybe I try to trade for like Brock Bowers or something, but that's my only waiver wire thing for right now. And then, yeah, who do you have for waiver wire, or who are you trying to get?
I'm probably not going to get this because I'm 11 out of 12 on the waiver wire. So chances are someone picks him up. But I like picking up Wan'Dale Robinson here. He's had a lot of targets in this Giants offense. And the player I'm dropping is Tutu Atwell. So I'm not too worried about that. Either way, if I keep Tutu or I get Wan'Dale, I'm fine with that. Because, who cares? I mean, maybe Robinson could fit into that flex spot, especially I have Cortland Sutton there right now. I'm not too excited about that. So maybe he could fit there. I'm also picking up the Broncos defense this week. We kind of talked about how they were good last week. They're going up against this Raiders team, who I think they can win against. And I'm dropping the Texans defense because they were trash this week. I don't want them. And then my kicker is on a bye this week, so I'm trying to pick up Austin Seibert from the Washington Commanders. He's averaging like 12 or 13 points a game right now. I need a new kicker, so this would be a perfect roster move for me.
Yeah, I mean, Goff and Amon-Ra are on bye weeks, so I'm going to put Jordan Love back in. I didn't play him last week because I wasn't sure how he's going to do come back on the injury. And then I'm going to put in Darnell Mooney for Amon-Ra. Obviously, once the waiver wire goes through, I'll put Tucker Kraft in. And then I'm thinking I'm probably going to put Rashid Shaheed in over Shakir. He's still questionable with that ankle injury. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's going to depend. And Shaheed, as of right now, is projected for more points. Obviously, that doesn't mean anything. But, I mean, we'll just... Yeah, I'll have to see on, how Shakir his status is, but I think I may just end up putting in Shaheed and Mooney this week. Both of them. I'm going to put Darnell Mooney in either way. I feel like he's going to have a better chance of getting me points than Shaheed. Maybe. We'll see. But I may put both of them in. And then, I mean, there's no other. I thought about picking up Wan'Dale Robinson on a waiver, but I was like, my wide receivers are solid. So it's just, I'll cross that bridge next week. I think my kicker's on a bye week next week. So I'll probably end up dropping Keon Coleman. And I'm still going to rock that Jets defense, even though they probably might get -1 point. I'm still going to do it anyway. And yeah, I'll just have to see how everything else goes. But I mean, hey, I'm projected for 73 points and that's with my 2 players having buys. So this may be a good week for me.
Yeah, looking at my bench, I mean, my receivers aren't that great. I got Cortland Sutton, Keenan Allen, and Jacoby Myers and Tutu Atwell on my bench right now. I did have Devontae Smith. I'm assuming he's going to be out again this week with that concussion. Right now it says he's
Probably.
going to be out. So, wait, he's a bye, so it doesn't matter. But so my wide receiver room is kind of depleted right now. So Wan'Dale Robinson would be a huge help to this team. I really don't think I'm going to get him though, to be honest. So that's whatever. Trey McBride maybe will be back, so that might be a upgrade over Zach Ertz. I'm not really sure, to be honest. Tight end position has been really weird.
Tight end
And my
position has been a
matchup,
struggle for me.
yeah, no, tight end is tough this year, especially if you don't. Well, even like no one is very reliable this year at tight end. But I don't hate my matchup this week. Um, I'm going up against Sam Darnold, London game. He's not going to score his projected points. It's a London game. Joe Mixon coming off that injury against Buffalo. That'll be a tough matchup for Joe Mixon. DeAndre Swift somehow projected 15.5 points, even though he's been trash outside of last week. Drake London averaging 13 points. Not too worried about him. Pickens, boomer bust wide receiver. He's gonna bust against Dallas. Uh, Jake Ferguson is probably better than my tight end. He's got Debo in the flex. He probably wins that. And then Raiders defense, I'm not buying in on. And Jake Moody, all right, whatever. It's a kicker. So we'll see. I'm projected to lose right now by 11, but that I also don't have a kicker yet, so I have no kicker points added, and I'm upgrading my defense. So I think I will be able to handle it this week. So yeah.
Yeah, as of right now, I haven't switched anything out. Neither has my opponent. I have a 54% chance of winning. He's got Richardson at quarterback, he's questionable. But then he's got Barkley, Calvin Ridley, and Sam Laporte on bye weeks. He's got Zamir White, Garrett Wilson, Brian Robinson. The Pittsburgh defense against Dallas, which is probably not the smartest thing, and then Justin Tucker. But if Anthony Richardson can't play, his other quarterback is Deshaun Watson, who they're playing Washington, but Deshaun Watson's been so inconsistent. And unless he does some waiver wires, my opponent, his only other running back that isn't on a bye week is Alexander Madison. And J.K. Dobbins is on a bye week as well, so he would have to put in Alexander Madison unless he gets someone off the waiver wire in for Barkley, and then his only other tight end is Taysom Hill is questionable, so we'd have to get another tight end. And then he's got some options for a wide receiver. He could put in Christian Kirk or Dunze or even Dontavian Wick. So we'll have to see what the waiver wire presumes. But yeah, I mean, I haven't changed my lineup yet. I'll do that tomorrow, but I'm still projected to win.
I don't want to be
without
that guy,
moves.
but he can put Brian Robinson in his RB spot, and then he'll just have to flex either
That's true.
Wicks or Kirk or something like that.
We'll see what he ends up doing.
Yeah, we'll see.
So that's fantasy for the week. I was surprised they even came close to winning that. I thought I was going to win that game. That's this week, and then looked really bad. and then I almost came back. So we'll see. I'm currently in last, well, tied for last, but I lose. I lose based on the amount of points, but it's also crazy. If I look at my stats real quick, I've I've gained a total of 386.2 points, which I think is the lowest in our league. No, it's the second lowest. But I've given up almost the exact amount of points as I've I've had. I've given up .5, 6 more points than I've gained, which is crazy. Somehow, I don't even know how that's possible. And I have an 8% chance of making the playoffs, so that's not good. But we'll cross that bridge when that gets there. Moving on.
That's unfortunate.
Moving on to our fun question. So mine was in honor of the international game starting this week. What city or country, however you want to put it, would you want to see the NFL play at next? It doesn't need to, logically or financially make sense. Just where would you like to see them play?
Bro, what? I heard the North Sentinel Islands were a very prime spot for some primetime football. They are a very isolated group with no knowledge of internet or anything like that, so I think it'd be a fun game to introduce NFL football to the reserved tribes that live on the island. So yeah, that's my pick. What about you?
This is a troll pick. I was thinking about this, dude. Either the Bahamas or Japan. Like the scenery would go crazy, but you need to have a stadium almost like how high school stadiums are built that aren't in Texas. Like the bleachers are kind of far back, and you can almost like you look either way and you kind of have a view of something. But like, dude, if it was in Japan, you need like the sakura trees or whatever they're called in the background. Like that would be so lit. Or in the Bahamas, it's just like the ocean or something in the background of the football field. Like that'd be crazy if they did either of those for more of a scenic thing. Not the actual game, but like I think that would be pretty neat.
I agree, that would be pretty cool actually, now that I think about it. All right, my fun question. Let's see here. Hmm. To be honest, I didn't have one prepared. It's my fault. But off the top of my dome, what? No, that's a bad question. Who has been the most disappointing player through the first 4 weeks of the NFL, in your opinion?
Dude, there's so many you could do. I'm not gonna do a rookie because they're a rookie, but this tough. I think you could say Aaron Rodgers. I mean, granted he's coming off an injury, but like the Achilles injury, but he's had like a game or two where he's looked good, but then he has got some games where he's really struggled. I mean, he struggled against San Francisco, he struggled against Denver. He had that good game week 3 against, who did they play week 3? I don't remember who they played week 3. But whoever they played week 3, actually, let me pull it up. He had a good game against the Patriots. Of course, it was the Patriots. Even the Titans game, he didn't have the greatest game. He only threw 176 yards. I don't think anyone was expecting Aaron Rodgers to be, Aaron Rodgers, like MVP Aaron Rodgers, 8,000 yards and 400 touchdowns. But he's definitely been disappointing compared to, I think, how everyone thought we were going to see this Jets offense in general.
Yeah, that's a good one. He's been kind of subpar, I would say, for Aaron Rodgers standards. My player who I think has been the biggest kind of like bust, I guess, for the year is going to have to be.
Oh, I could have done someone way better than Rodgers, I'm realizing.
I think it's gonna have to be Brandon Ayuk because he's done nothing. I mean, he hasn't scored a touchdown. They got that contract done so he could play week 1 or whatever. He hasn't done anything, man. I don't think he's even had a game over maybe over 50 receiving yards. I'm not sure what his stats are. But I mean, I haven't heard his name called once, to be honest. Like, no one's talking about Ayuk. He was a top second or third round pick in fantasy. And I think I kind of said it when I was talking about the games, but he needs to have a big week. Because he's not living up to that contract right now. Uh, I mean, yeah, no, it's just been bad.
I agree. I mean, I think you could throw Travis Kelsey and Mark Andrews in there as well. Like they
I think
haven't
you can
done.
throw every tight end in there.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they haven't done anything. And I think that's conversation. All the defenses have gone back to like that too high safety. And the defense has just gotten better, like throughout the years. So, yeah, the too high safety isn't helping either. For passing, for fantasy, whatever it may be. But we'll just have to see what happens the next couple weeks. See if the tight ends get some production. See if how the passing game is working as well, because the defenses have definitely been picking it up, even the bad ones. So we'll just have to see how it goes from there on out, especially into week 4 week 5 where we got some international games. We got, some teams on bye weeks as well. So we'll have to see where everything sorts itself out. Anyways, those guys, thank you guys for watching this episode of Midweek Meetings. If you're watching over on Twitch, make sure you follow us both. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Midweek Meetings channel on YouTube. Week 5 is around the corner. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Hopefully our predictions are good. Hopefully our fantasy teams do good. And hopefully I can cook with the $1 I have left in my fantasy underdog account, because I was cooking last week until the 4:00 games and it fell apart. So we'll have to see. I was looking earlier. I'm gonna wait to do one, but I really wasn't liking any of the ones for this week. So I may just do like a free pick plus a Derrick Henry anytime touchdown. Honestly, like it was not looking good, at least now, but we'll see. That is it though, guys. Thank you guys for watching, for tuning in, and make sure you guys catch us every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for live episodes of Midweek Meetings. You can also watch us over on YouTube on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@midweekmeetings. Thank you guys for watching. I'm KnockdownNico alongside Pr3ssix. We'll see you guys next week once week 5 is wrapped up.
Later.